Hey everybody. Well, despite the fact that it's like 60 degrees today, we're nearing the end of the fall term at COD and of course the end of our Brit Lit course. I'm just going to put myself into it. So we've just finished up a unit on Derek Walcott, our most contemporary author that we read, still living and working. Having moved out of the modernist period into a period that I suppose you could call postmodern or post-colonial, but those distinctions become a little bit harder to make or to see the closer you get in time to them. So I think we're less caught up with precisely what those terms mean, whereas in a period like the Romantic period, which we have some historical distance from, it's a little bit easier to see general trends or to really, I guess, compartmentalize it a little bit more obviously. But Derek Walcott is just the perfect ending to our course because he provides this great bookend as an epic poet from a very small island to where we started our course with John Milton, a very different kind of poet, but still an epic poet from a fairly small island at the time, just happened to be England, right? And so we go from the most quintessential of Brit Lit authors to one that really challenges the notion of Brit Lit, in the sense that you might think about, like, if he's not from Britain, why is he in our anthology? And even our anthology is not technically the anthology of British literature, it's the anthology of English literature. And so there's odd distinctions there, clearly not just anything written in English, but deriving from this English literary tradition. And because the English or the British Empire reached its height in the late 18th, early 19th century, which is something that we looked at, England was kind of everywhere, at least in certain places around the globe. The sun never set on that empire, so somewhere it was always noon, or 5 o'clock if you like it that way. And so someone like Walcott then really challenges our notions of British literature being this very contained kind of national literature, when in fact it has, precisely because of that period of empire, all of these histories or lineages that go back to and then or come from so many diverse places: India, Africa, the West Indies, like what Derek Walcott's from. And so his home island, St. Lucia, was the property of a number of European powers, including England, Spain, France, the Dutch I think were in there for a while. And so as we saw in his various lectures, but also in his work, of course, he really speaks to that sense of being what he calls the divided child, or having this kind of multicultural history for good and for bad. And so he presents this really complex kind of challenge for us, especially in terms of a Brit Lit course, because the very notion of like a British or a national literature is fundamentally challenged. And so the other thing that I find so fascinating about Walcott is, of course, he doesn't shy away from this, but makes it a central feature of his work, and does it in such a way that he sort of flips the situation, or turns the tables, and sees this fractured history, or this multi-layered, multifaceted, complex history, not as a problem or as a kind of disability that he has to work through as a writer, but as a sort of privileged place to write from in the contemporary world that is so, as we learned from Eliot, so fractured, so fragmented, so pulled apart, so various and so disjointed, and so composed of pieces that don't on the surface always go together, just like the history of a place like St. Lucia, and thus the history of someone like Walcott, but also his engagement with various literary traditions or cultural traditions, both the good side of those and the bad side. So he really presents this great final writer for us to look at, because his work addresses those fundamental issues, and again, because he sort of harkens us back to the very place that we started our Brit Lit course with, that quintessential British author, John Milton. So we then move into the final unit for the course. The due date is, let me just double check it here, Thursday, December 6th. Although Many people might finish this early, so I would certainly encourage you to do so. It's a little bit like our midterm essay. The final essay here is just a chance to think a little bit more broadly across various authors that we've read, thinking in terms of thematically how a number of them have addressed a central theme. And I've suggested some in the course, but there might be others that have struck your interest, so you can certainly pursue those. And you'll see they're very broad in nature, so really you want to take those broad themes and think about how they've been explored by particular authors in particular works that we've read throughout the course. So things like freedom, creativity, equality, identity, and again, there might be others that you're interested in pursuing. So the theme is general, but remember, we're really looking for particular examples like direct quotation and that kind of thing from the works. You're not covering any more than 3 works, so it's not like you somehow have to encapsulate the entire course that we've been through, but do try to think pretty broadly. So you don't want everything to be from the last couple of units or the first couple. Try to think sort of across the various authors that we've looked at. And then the only other piece of the course that's left, and that's in Unit 16 here, is just a basic open-ended question from me, a course or instructor evaluation. Kind of, you know, what worked, what didn't work, what would you change if you could, what did you find beneficial, you know, just some basic feedback. It's really helpful for me. It sounds kind of like I'm trying to get the right answers, but it's helpful for me to learn what worked in the course, which sounds really self-serving, I know, but please don't forget to tell me that part of it, because it's good for me to know so that I can make sure that whatever works is a component, certainly across this course, but even in other courses, if there's just some fundamental kind of component that's not really content-based, but more on the teaching side of it, or the maybe the course design, which is really more important in this online format than face-to-face, how things are laid out and organized and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, it's very informal, just some feedback here. There's no grade attached to it or anything like that. So nothing too major. Otherwise, that's about it. So what I'm going to do pretty soon is I'll set up the grade book so it begins to display, or it displays a letter grade, which will be your final grade once, of course, everything is submitted and graded. So you might see it and it might look low right now, but that's just because all of the stuff isn't necessarily calculated in yet. So don't get too concerned. This is a good time, though, to, you know, review all the grades, make sure everything was counted if it was in on time and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, if you have questions, be in touch with me. And that's pretty much it. So hopefully you did have a good time in the course, in as much as you can have a good time doing this kind of stuff. But it's always fun for me, and I have to say, sounds corny, but the quality of the discussion board essays and the replies that people were doing really consistently throughout the course was really good. They were, you know, always enjoyable to read, and things that I hadn't thought of before, and just really good work. Not much more to say other than that. So anyway, again, hopefully you had a good time, learned something, and if you're at COD at all, be sure to look me up and take a face-to-face or another online course, and hopefully we'll see each other either physically or virtually in the future. All right, take care.